All right.
Going live now.
All right, and welcome to this episode of YouTube Live. On this episode, we are going to be using the filter blend from Square Mile. But instead of focusing on the bean, we're going to change it up a bit, and we're going to focus on technique. And the reason is that way, if you have a bean that's in the same world as this, you can follow what we've done here. Now, there's a whole bunch of new tech. We've got microphones here. We've got 3 cameras pointing up and down and every which way. So far, everything's working great. Let's see, it is Halloween, so maybe the gremlins will come out and break something. But, and I have a bit of a confession, which is that I have never had a Filter 2.1 drink. Scott and Paul were making them at this trade show in Italy, where we both got COVID. And then I was busy doing my allongés and whatnot, and I never had one. So, so this is going to be a bit of those reaction videos, like, wow, I can't believe what that's like. Or, seriously, people get excited about this? We'll see, because I would make an allongé out of this sort of thing and be completely happy. So I'm sort of curious as to what's exciting about filter coffees, because I think espresso is better than filter. Will I be proven wrong? Let's see.
Okay. Well, we'll see what we can do. I mean, this is a filter blend, and it would be a real shame not to use the Filter 2.1 on this and trial it out. And to give a bit of a background on Filter 2.1, this was the brainchild of Scott Rao, who was inspired by Jonathan Garnier, who basically shared his AeroPress recipe. And so he utilized techniques from a long pre-infusion, which Garnier was essentially using a 10-minute pre-infusion on his AeroPress, which is really, really long and is very rare to come across. At which point sort of Scott was inspired to trial it out and adapt this theory onto espresso.
Right.
So it's kind of like a filter paper sandwich. So we have a filter, either we will be using a nylon filter, but we also have paper filters as well. You can use paper filters, either cut them to size, which you can use Chemex, or I've used V60s before, or you can directly go to a company like Cypress who specialize in selling those papers. So as well as a long pre-infusion, a filter sandwich, he also uses what I would term is like a hybrid blooming style. So it's blooming and holding pressure, but is also trickling a little bit of flow at the same time.
Right.
So this has kind of evolved over time. It was originally Filter 1 or
Filter 1,
Yeah.
and then he made like Filter 1.1, but it was completely different. So I was like,
Yes.
Scott, call it Filter 2.
Yeah. So I believe the original recipe was 16 grams.
Okay.
What we were doing in Milan was 12 grams. And I think it's quite good as well, because we'll try to use things that you may already have. And it just so happens that in Milan, we were using 12 grams in an 18-gram basket. And most people get the 18-gram basket with the decent. So don't feel like you have to go out and especially buy the filter, the basket for it. You can use what you already have. We just have to make a slight adjustment on the profile.
Okay.
We have got Visualizer installed, so these graphs will be uploaded onto the Visualizer website, and you can download the profile directly from there rather than inputting the fields yourself.
Yeah, and I just realized we didn't put the link. It's on my personal Visualizer account, which I think is Visualizer and then /John Buckman. But I will put the Visualizer URL in the YouTube comments, or if you go to visualizer.coffee right now, search users and look for John, I should pop up, and each shot as we make it will appear there, so you can follow it on your big screen. You can also download it and do what Paul is doing.
Yep. So if we look at the original profile, just to have a brief run through, where this really differentiates is in the style of the pre-infusion, and the way Scott describes it as it's extracting with a long pre-infusion but very, very gently. And what he's enabled to achieve in this sort of reaction is a super high TDS that we will eventually water down to taste. But this actually brings out a lot of the flavors, so it's actually palatable and you can actually taste those flavors.
How does the concentration of this, the TDS, compare to an allongé? Same sort of world?
Same sort of world until we dilute. So you are probably getting about 23% in terms of TDS. But when we water it down, it may, depending on your taste as well, it will probably go down to about 8, maybe 10. So if you like it a bit stronger, it'll probably come out a bit.
Okay,
like
and it sounds like we're getting more out of the coffee too, because we'd be doing 15 grams on allongé.
Yes, that's right. So one thing I really love about this is you only use 12 grams of coffee. It's super efficient. And you'll just get more bang for your buck at the end of the day. And with climate change going on, I think we should be looking at recipes like this that really extract efficiently, but have good flavor as well.
Yeah, and now you can spend 8% more on your coffee beans
Yes.
and get better beans.
That's right.
So
that's right.
take us through what's going to happen now. You're going to walk through the recipe, or you want to make one? What do you want to do?
I just want to explain briefly what I've changed to a 12 gram with an 18 gram basket. And the way Scott described it was you have to manage the pressure to be below 1 bar. 1 bar is you can taste it and still get good flavors, but to get a really stellar shot, I would say anywhere below half a bar to 0.3 of a bar for your extraction, and generally everything else will follow through. But what he does say with reducing the grammage is that you have to be mindful of the puck depth. So you have to align your puck depth with the flow rate going in during pre-infusion, and that kind of controls your back pressure as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
This sounds like a whole different world from espresso.
Yes, I mean, he's drawn from different techniques, and he's really utilized the control of the D1, and I think the hybrid blooming flow stage, where he holds the pressure and has a little trickle through is pretty revolutionary. And the reason for that and the way it has come about was he enables
Let's
a
hold
slow.
that.
Yeah, sure.
Because we're going to make some coffee, and we're going to have to sit and wait for it to get made.
Yes,
So
yes.
I want to save some of your best stories for
Sure.
while we watch water slowly pour into a cup. Okay, so what are we doing now?
All right, so first off, I'm going to dose out some water in a jug, and this water will be used to water down the eventual shot. The ratio we will pour will be a 3-to-1, so we'll have 12 grams in and 36 grams out at the end. I'm not going to set the water too hot coming out of the D1, just at 60 degrees, so we have less time for it to cool down and we can actually taste it. And I'm dosing about 150 grams into here. So I'm going to be diluting it around about 4.5, maybe 5-to-1, depending on what the strength comes out.
Just to point out, and you can see that's nice, smooth, and not stuttery water. That is a new feature in the latest D1 app. If we go to the tablet, you can see, can show the tablet, good. The tablet has this flow rate control here, and if you make the flow rate really quite fast, then it basically gives you a nice smooth flow. It also means that we can do a lot faster water than we used to. Can I have camera 1, please? Oh, camera 1's just died. Okay. Hi. Okay, so as I said, it's Halloween and the gremlins have attacked. So, sorry.
It's all right.
It used to be with the previous D1 that we really focused on perfect water temperature, which for espresso makes a lot of sense. But for your diluting an Americano, for example, doesn't make a lot of sense. So we compromised on exact temperature accuracy in order to, have a much faster flow rate. So instead of instead of a Americano diluting at 6 milliliters per second, we're now diluting at 10 mils per second, and it's not splashing everywhere, which is really nice. So faster and smoother, and like 2 or 3 degrees of inaccuracy, which I think is a good trade-off. Anyway, that's a bunch of babbling, but it was something that really bothered us, was the Americanos were slow to make and splattered, and that's kind of no more in the version that is going stable, we think, next week.
So we've actually increased the flow rate, is what I've gathered as well.
Yeah, we've gone from 6 mils to 10 mils per second, which basically got rid of the pulse.
Yeah.
Now it's going kind of continuously. And you could see there were like 2 or 3 centimeters where you had a constant stream before it broke up. So it's called laminar flow for the geeks out there.
Learn something new every day, John. That's great. Okay.
What are we doing? Are we grinding with the niche to start out?
Yep, so I've got some 12-gram doses already pre-weighed for you. So first things first, we need to wet some filter papers. So we need the smallest filter paper at the bottom of the filter first.
Okay, I also see that there are some beans in here, so let me get power to this. Oh dear, oh dear. And there we go. All right. It wouldn't be a decent Espresso video if the niche were actually working when we turned it on. It is not niche's fault, it is our fault. Okay, so we're going to wet some filter papers. We've got this here, and I have filter paper here, and we're going 56 or 55?
So the smaller one, so the 55, yep.
Okay. So I've got a little stack of them here that I'm going to grab. These are nylon?
Yes, these are the nylon.
Okay, so I'm going to put that here, and then we're going to wet it with
I just used a little drop over here, and you've already got it out anyway. And then you just got to make sure it's stuck to the bottom.
Okay, so there it is spreading around. Do I have to wet it after my first one, or is basically if I don't dry the puck, will that be good enough?
So basically I normally just like drop out the droplets out there and then dose straight on the top. And then I will pre-wet the larger one as that's dosing. And then just a little rake on the top, and then just a kiss of the tamper.
A kiss?
Yeah.
Aww.
So
it's not Valentine's Day, it's Halloween. Okay, so I've got 15-gram doses. I'm just going to grind at this point?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And we'll see where we are. I'm pretty sure that the grind will be out of wet because I don't think we've touched this since the Elgamu, or whatever beans were in there. No, actually, we're still blend, right? So this should be set for a rau allongé. If I remember
We're about to find out.
We're about to find out. So my guess is that it's probably set for a rau allongé, and we could be quite close. But I would suspect that we probably may be getting should be a little bit finer.
All right, but not literally kiss, but just the tamper's gonna kiss. Okay, we've kissed the puck. That's what it looks like. Would you have felt the grounds to decide if they were in the right range?
I would have done, yes.
Okay.
But I think because we had the same blend in there, I would just see where it is on this profile. Because this profile has such a long prevision of bloom, it's quite hard to predict how the grinds are going to react, especially with it, we've got a drip cycle about almost 90 seconds long. So,
okay.
Then we need a larger filter just to go over the top.
Okay. This is complicated. So I've got small and large. You gave me little cups.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get confused, as I'm prone to do. So I will say I'm not going to do what I shouldn't do during COVID, which is lick my finger to get the filter out.
So this is how I got COVID in my life.
Is it?
I don't know.
But at home, I would probably lick my finger to get the filter out because it's quite hard to get them out.
Okay.
So slightly smaller on the bottom, slightly bigger on the top by 1.5 millimeters. And I'm sure it makes a difference. These things always do.
Well, I think as long as you've covered the holes in the majority of the puck, the main purpose of the filter sandwich is just to maximize your extractions, but also to prevent channeling. So it increases the puck integrity of your puck at the same time. And I've just realized that I've just used the regular filter 2.1 instead of the 12-gram one. So we can kind of see what the regular profile is going to do, as opposed to modifying it a little bit to match the actual puck depth. So it's okay. We can have some discussion points here.
Does this look right? What's happening right now?
So,
are you happy or unhappy with what's happening?
Right now, the variable I want to look at is the pressure. So in general, the pressure should stay below 1 bar before it goes into the sort of blooming / drip phase. But it has shot up to about 1.5, which is a bit touch and go. So it really depends on the bean and the actual grind setting that you have right now. But because of this extra pressure, we believe that it will add certain astringencies or bitter notes to your brew. So if you do have an extraction like this with a peak pressure at the start that is above 1 bar, have a look to see if your dose is correct for the recipe. That's a mistake we've done. Or look into your grind, or perhaps even a slight lighter tam. So I did sort of view your temp, and it did look pretty heavy.
Right.
And maybe I'll show you one that
Like
that I
this
saw.
little kiss.
Yeah, that is literally a little kiss.
I'll use my pinky.
You probably could, you know. And but right now, you know, the extraction's looking okay. We've kind of got enough liquid in there, so I'm actually going to stop it here, because we want to go to a 1 to 3 ratio, so it's 12 grams in, 36 out. And because we had a slightly higher pressure, we've got more liquid out than we should have done.
Wait,
for this
we're
recipe.
done?
Yeah, we're done.
It's like a Slayer shots that never became an espresso.
So this is a very highly concentrated shot. So if you smell this now, the aromas are pretty sharp and very, very concentrated. But when you actually start adding the water, you will find there will be a lot more. Would you like to try it on its own or before it's watered down?
Let's get the top camera in there so we can get an action shot. There we go. And I smelled it. I think I'm going to be nice to my palate.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yep.
and not do that. All right. So you're watering it down, but you're watering it down without measuring.
Yes, because we use the water measurement here.
You already know how much water you're putting in. Oh, okay. You're almost fired there. You haven't measured something. Oh my God.
Now this is one of the beauty things of the workflow with this profile, because you can sort of, you know, get a little bit ahead of the game without having, oh, I need to weigh my water again. You can just rely on this, set it off, and then press go.
So I always use the water measuring to make the perfect Americano, you know, just the way I wanted to. That's really cool. I didn't really think about pre-dosing the water, and then I could just go bloop because I got it. One other little thing in this new version is that we used to use volumetric stopping when we filled with hot water, which was 20% accurate. New feature is if you have a scale, when we do the hot water spout, we stop exactly at the scales point. So that's now much more accurate, which is also cool. So little improvements. Yep.
Now I also must say I've dosed 150, but I did use a tad little drop to wet the filters.
Oh, okay.
And I've got about.
You took that into account.
Yes, and I have just out of habit, because sometimes you don't know what the bean's going to be like or how strong it is. So out of habit, I leave an ounce inside, roughly an ounce.
Okay.
And then I taste, and then if I feel it needs to go more, I'll add a little bit more.
Okay. There's no latte art to ruin, so you can do that.
No latte art to ruin. But you can always add more, but you can't take the water away. So it's always better to add less water, because you don't want to end up with a brew that is just really, really watery, and you just wanted it stronger. So
I get this at trade shows all the time. I make an espresso for somebody, and they'll go like, "Oh, that's really bitter." I'm like, "Yeah, that's because there's no water in it." No, it's really bitter. I'm like, "Let me add some water." And they go, "Oh, it's so good. It's not bitter anymore." I'm like, "It's not bitter. It's just overwhelming." So it smells great. It does smell. You know, it's quite different from the allongé.
Yes.
It's much more earthy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that kind of lightness that I really like. And that fruitiness. But let's see. Let's taste. I mean, it's beautifully delicate. It's again reminding me actually of a rather expensive tea.
Yeah.
You know, like the kind of funky fermented teas that nonetheless have a lot going on. So that's super easy to drink, and I'm not a filter coffee person because usually they're not that easy to drink. So back to you, because camera one is has a poltergeist today.
So yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with what you said, and this is the type of brew that will get better over time. So actually, this is probably the least amount of your flavors you'll taste from this brew. You'll get a lot of the florals and some fruit and some acidity, but a lot of sweetness.
What does get better over time mean? Like sitting there, it gets better?
Because as it cools down more, you'll taste more of the fruit come out.
Okay.
And actually, you could judge this recipe basically how well it tastes when it's cold. And I've found that just by this week and using a lot of Filter 2.0 recipes, I've been, making a good one and going over my caffeine quota, putting them in the fridge for the next day, and actually having a fantastic cold brew in the morning just from a Filter 2.0.
Oh, right. So it's not a cold brew, it's literally a brew that's cold.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
A brew that's cold, but
Because you brewed it warm.
Yes,
You just chilled it.
that's right.
Okay. Is there any trick when you're doing that to like fill it to the very top so it doesn't oxidize or anything like that?
Yes, there is. It's a really good question. So I use cling film.
Okay.
And I actually put a bit of pool of water on the top, and it displaces the air at the top, and you seal it around the outside. But you just got to be a bit careful when you're taking it out in the morning. But
so I have this little can of stuff for wine, which has a gas in it that's quite heavy, and I'm forgetting what the gas is. It's argon, and what you do is instead of having to fill the whole cavity, just before you put the cap in, you put this proboscis in, you just go ksh, and then close it, and that heavy gas falls on the wine and then prevents it from being oxidized.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone in the comments has ever tried this. I would love to hear whether a little argon spray on coffee that has sat for a day in the refrigerator would help it not oxidize. It should. I mean, I think it's the same principle of oxidation of wine.
Yes. Because you're essentially making a barrier.
Exactly.
Same
as you are doing with plastic, except with argon.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pretty economical too, because you just go ksh. It's not like one of the other, I forget what the other one is, that has the proboscis that actually fills the whole thing with gas, and it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
This is a thin little layer. All right, so you weren't happy that you picked the right recipe.
Yeah.
What changes when you change recipes? Is it just the time or the flow rate?
It's just the flow rate going in, and I've changed a little bit of the time. So long story short, I looked at his numbers in the original recipe, and I've just made a simple division. So I'm using 12 grams, the original recipe uses 16 grams, so I'm just using 3/4 of the values. So you can backwards work out what you need to do. But again, it would be easy if you just download it from Visualizer, and you can just see all the fields that have changed. But the main thing that I would say is the flow rate going in to match the puck depth.
Should we make it right then, and then see how it tastes different?
Yeah, of course.
Will it taste different?
I would hope so.
Okay. I'm going to save this in another cup.
Yep. Okay. So.
And I'm going to prepare another one for you. Here's number one.
Okay. So just to give you what has changed, the flow rate went down in the first step from 4 to 2, so I've halved it. The time is the same. And in step 2, I've reduced by 2 seconds. Just on the time, and there is no change on the third one. So what's interesting to note is on the third pre-infusion is what I'd like to point out is the move on if you're reaching over 0.3 bar. Now 0.3 is one of the values that Scott Rao will say to look out for. If you're hitting 0.3, most things will follow on after that. In my experience with some of the beans I've been using, it's really dependent on the basket and the recipe that you're using. But in general, if I'm under 1, I'm pretty okay with it. If it is above 1, I may drink it a lot quicker and won't let it cool down as much. I just find the ones that are above 1 bar just have that bit of a rough finish that is not so pleasant, as opposed to one that is extracted at a lower bar.
So Paul, camera top, he's going to kiss the puck.
So essentially I'm just letting it rest, and then I'm just letting
Actually, I'm going to move it over here, sorry, because I can tell that they can't see anything. So there we go. So
I'm just going to use 2 fingers just to show the strength, and it's literally, I've got resistance, that's it. So it really is like a really light minimum touch.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll see when you bring it out, it's actually still pretty high up in the basket. But if you tap that fully, that would be pretty low, and that's kind of what I observed as well with your tamp as well.
So it's going to impede basically the water movement.
Yes.
By tamping too hard.
So we're trying to control 1 or 2 things: is the back pressure from the basket, and as well as the grounds. But also we're making sure that puck has a certain level of integrity, which is helped by the sandwiching. Okay.
This is probably the only one we're going to make now with the niche. The goal was to make one good one with the niche, and then one good one with the lagom, and then have a reaction video where I explain how the much more expensive grinder makes much better coffee. Hopefully that's the outcome that we get.
Okay. So just make sure I've got the right profile. That's right. Okay.
That portafilter is wicked hot from this, I guess because there's
yes.
so much water dripping through it for so long.
Okay, I think we could probably say that the grind. So we're dripping out quite slow, but I would say the pressure is quite good. And I would say that the Rao Allonge grind setting for this bean, which should have been the previous one, is a little bit finer than we would need. And the only reason I would say that was we have a little bit of delay after we exit pre-infusion, where I would already expect a few drips to come out.
Okay.
But,
we're going to go one finer than on this? One coarser, rather.
I would go coarser, and maybe not all the way to one, maybe even
just a half?
Just a minute, yeah, half
all right.
at the most.
You may notice that on some of these views, we've got the programs. There it is, 10.5. We can go back to the tablet, but when we bring that up again, it's going to say 10.5 on it. So that is there. It's a new feature for you to show you what our current settings are, our dose weight, grind setting, all that. She's already on it, 10.5. All right, I need to switch that to 10.5. Do I need to put some grind? I probably should put some coffee through that.
A little bit through, yeah.
Okay, I need some from there.
Now, this is a good data point to say, like, I've only got about 20 grams in cup now, but I'm just about coming up to the ramp-up phase, which is the last portion of the extraction. And I would actually expect maybe 5, maybe 8 more grams in cup than I am here right now.
So a scale is super helpful with
Yes.
these, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, once you're in the ballpark, you can make really minute changes that actually make a real difference, and you can taste it in the cup. But you first have to, you know, make sure that you have the correct data at a certain time to ensure you're hitting those targets. The reason is, you know, if we've got less volume in the cup before the ramp up, or we've got more, we'll delve into the under and over extraction territories where, you know, we'll get a cup that is subpar. Okay, so this time I didn't pre-do the water, so we can do it now. And because we've already got it set up for 150 grams, and I've done it at 60 degrees, so when we mix it in, we can drink it a bit quicker.
Can I use a few drops of the previous one to wet the filter?
Yeah, yeah.
We both had COVID. I'll use that.
Okay, so note to self, please align the...
So what he's done is he's got the jug too far forward. Yeah. The water spout on the D1 for hot water is behind the basket. So if you've got something really tall there, that can be a problem. So that's what happened there.
Yeah, it's my habit of always matching my placement on this scale at the same place.
That's true. Is this drinkable, or do we want to just pass on it?
No, I think I'm quite interested to taste it, but
right.
I think we should get on the next one. So while we're tasting, we can get the next shot going.
Okay.
Okay, so it has, you know, pretty much stopped at 149. So it is very, very accurate. Just down one.
One thing I do like about this is I'm able to put much cooler water in, not cold water, but cool water, so I can actually drink it right away.
Yeah.
So we don't have the annoying video pause of telling you to all wait while our espresso cools.
So it's still a little bit hot, but it's...
Yeah, it's what I would call morning temperature, which is I'd use it to wake up, but I can taste a bit less. It's fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. I wouldn't say it tastes like coffee. It's more interesting than that. And it doesn't have any of the burnt notes or any of that bad stuff.
No.
I would just say it's just a bit simpler.
Yes, yeah. And it creates a friction on your palate. So one way coffee people kind of taste body in coffee is they use their tongue and when they're drinking something with body, they'll brush their tongue on the top of the palate, and if it's slippy, it's got good high body. If it sticks to your palate, it means it's got quite a thin body. And a good thing to sort of train yourself is with milk. Milk will be the slippery, got higher body, and water, so you can kind of calibrate yourself.
So that is a half coarser.
Okay, excellent. So load this up, get this out.
I am going to make that go away.
Can I
Yep.
interrupt with a question?
Yeah, of
go
course.
ahead.
Why are you using a much higher temperature when using filter 2.1 with the normal espresso process?
Very
So
good
you
question.
should repeat the question.
Yep. So the question was why we're using such high temperatures as opposed to more standardized and familiar espresso temperatures. So we may be more familiar with temperatures ranging from 88 all the way up to 93, even lower for some cases with darker beans. But here we are using 98, I believe. Yep, 98. And
There is a temperature profile we should point out. So
Yes.
it starts at 98 and then it comes down to, it's asking to come down to 89, but really we're going from 98 down to 91. I'm going to guess that Scott Rayo saying this is a rather slow flow rate, and so we're not introducing that much heat to a room temperature coffee puck. So we need to start at a higher temperature to bring the infusion up. That's what I think he's doing. And then by the time we're down here, he probably is looking to extract somewhere around 90 is the reality, because the coffee puck is so much cooler. I should also mention that the D1's ability to measure the coffee puck is probably not great with this, because the way the temperature of the coffee puck is measured is you have the puck, you have a shower screen, and then you have a temperature probe above that. And unless you've got faster flowing water, so there's kind of water hitting the puck and then hitting the temperature probe, we're not going to see much. What we're actually going to measure is mostly the water coming in, because it comes in and then it gets soaked up by the puck immediately. It doesn't interact with the puck. Without that interaction, we can't tell you the temperature. We can't put a temperature probe in the coffee grounds themselves without causing channeling. So we put it 2 millimeters above, but with this recipe, that's what that means. So that's just kind of interesting. I just mentioned that.
And I think it's also like we've got such a long time between the actual increase in flow, and we're trickling at 0.1.
Are we ready to go, by the way?
Yeah, we're ready to
Let's
go.
do that while we babble on. Any other questions? We're going to taste this. Was I accurate, and is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I would say so. I think you gave a lot of the technical behind it. From a barista point of view, if I didn't know anything about it, I would say that it's due to the long holding bloom with a very slow flow.
It's better that it's cooled,
yes,
as you said. So I think I fooled myself a little bit thinking it was flat because it was too hot. It's like when I drink wine, like white wine that's too cold, I'm like, oh, it just tastes like apple juice. And then when it warms up, it actually tastes much more interesting.
Right,
So
yeah.
same thing in the other direction when it goes from hot to cooler.
This does have a bit of a stronger aftertaste though. And I wouldn't say it's an offensive bitter, but is a little bit bitter. And I would definitely contribute that to the higher pressures. If we see on this one here, without zooming in, we've almost got a flat line pressure below 1 bar. If we zoom in closer.
So I'm curious, if I crazy zoom, I can see the flow rate. So the blue is the water into the top of the coffee puck. The brown is water coming out, and these are basically drips that are coming in. And you can see initially more water came in, and now a little bit more water is coming out than in. There's a delay. Does this tell us anything? Is there an optimal brown line?
Well, I think the main thing is to look for the pressure, because when we get the decline, we're already drawing some of the solubles out, and now we're almost brewing without pressure.
We're 0, 1 bar. I was going to say, this is 0 to 1, the entire scale of the screen. So this is really at the bottom.
Yep, so we're hitting the ramp up just about 26 mLs in cup, and we want to stop it at 36, so this is a good extraction. We just a very little bit portion at the top, we went over 0.3, but I'm not too worried about that, because to be honest, this graph is how I would want it to look when I'm pulling this type of profile.
Is there a reason you're not doing stop by weight? I see you stopping at 36 grams each time.
Yeah, this is simply when you're finding your ground. Sometimes
Good pun.
Well, yeah, finding your ground. Sometimes you will find that you will get a gushing out, and it will stop when you've hardly got anything in there.
Okay.
So you can, save a shot and dilute it to see where you are. If you look at the limits, I think it's set to pretty extreme. Yes, it's set to a stop at 100 grams. So I think that's anticipating grounds that are ground too coarsely, and it's just gone wrong, and then it's just an opportunity for you to taste. You can set it in though. I would say if you found your ground and you've got a relatively good shot that you thought was good, then you can set the volume in cup at that point, and you will be a lot safer without the risk of wasting shots.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, assuming this looked right, it looked right to you.
Yep.
Then while you're doing that, I'm going to do the same. I've already pre-wet a filter paper here.
Excellent.
And I'm going to move us to the lagom while
Okay.
you do that. Oh shoot. Oh, brain lapse. Forgot the funnel.
That's good. It's all right.
Nice chaff there. And you're filling it again.
Yeah.
And it is the end of the day on Friday, folks. And so Paul did something really, really elegant there, which is his boss screwed up. So to make his boss feel better, he's screwed up. Which is top. I did notice. Well done. All right.
Okay.
Let me try wetting some filter paper.
Yep. Okay. So we've got this water ready.
I'm going to steal a drop of that.
Yep. So actually, I didn't end up putting the extra ounce into this. So I would say anywhere between 130 to 150, depending on your preferences. I've seen some coffees can take up to 170, which is about 1 to 1.5 after your 3 to 1 ratio. But yeah, just trial it out and add less before you add more, just in case you might get caught out. But John, this coffee is pretty delicious.
Oh, all right. I'm looking forward to delicious for change.
Yes. Hi.
So it should all be accurate. We're still doing 12 grams, and the setting is 2.7. So I haven't changed anything. I set that to be accurate before we start. My favorite part, I'm going to kiss the puck. We're going to have to come out with a special tamper now that's just for this, with like 2.3 pounds of spring resistance, and go through several weeks of experiments to figure out. So I just kind of very gently, I know I used my arm, but it's still nice and fluffy. One thing to notice right away is chaff, which for whatever reason, the niche just grinds and mixes in. Whereas the flat burr, and you can see actually if you look here, it sprayed it everywhere, but that's because I didn't have a funnel. But it's an interesting thing that large burr grinders tend to have chaff separate. I don't think it means anything.
No, I've not really put too much thought on why that's the case. I mainly just thought about...
Okay, we're back to closer to the first one, which I thought was pleasant.
Yeah.
Not amazing, but pleasant. TDS is much lower.
Yes.
I don't have that kind of overwhelming earthiness. I'm not wowed yet. Okay, I think this is nice, but it just does not compare to an Allongé. It doesn't have all the complexity and brightness and fruitiness.
That's right.
It's quite sedate.
Yeah.
I want to have this with a nice butter cookie and its comfort.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of intellect yet on this, and I'm looking forward to what spending several thousand US dollars more does to this bean.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you will find a bean that just doesn't work, but as you get into extracting such high TDSs and really sort of trying to be really efficient, because you got to bear in mind we're only using 12 grams of coffee, and that's
I don't care. I want to be good. Like, there's no point in saving 3 grams of coffee if the coffee's bad, because then I just throw out 12 grams as opposed to making it 15 and actually enjoying it. So, false economy, Paul. Wow me at 12 grams, and now I'm impressed.
Right.
All right, so let's see what happens here. I'm going to bang this out while we wait. Is it possible to reuse the top or the bottom? Or, I mean, that's kind of gnarly looking right now. There it is right there on the top camera.
I've done some experiments over the last week, and I adapted some methods from siphon cloths. Siphon cloths are they're made out of cloth, and we clean them with water, but you don't really use detergents or anything. You just submerge them in water and then put them in the fridge so they don't foster bacteria or have this funky smell. And I've done this with these filters, and unfortunately you do get a little bit of funky flavors in there. But bear in mind, I was using these filters about 4 or 5 times before I decided, I'm going to see if this works.
Over how many days?
Oh.
Yeah, so it's stopped for some reason. We don't know why. It has just stopped. We weren't watching the screen. Maybe hopefully someone was watching the screen and it popped up and said why.
Wait, it's meant to go over 100. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to make another one.
Yeah.
If someone was watching and saw on the screen what it said, can you put the comments so we know if it says stop by weight or...
Yeah.
Was it? Is there a stop by weight setting on this?
Yeah, but it's at 100.
Why don't you turn it off so we make sure that isn't what was going on?
Perhaps
it could be that I knocked the puck out and caused the shake.
Yeah.
And that could have freaked that out. So that is an issue, is if you are doing stop by weight, have a nice stable table that doesn't rock quite as much. Don't know if that's what it is. We're about to find out. So, once more, it's okay, I get to kiss the puck again.
Now, if you're finding trouble kissing the puck, you don't have to even tap the puck. So some people have had some success without tamping. And they just really solely rely on the filter sandwich. But I would lean towards tamping a little bit. It just gives you that extra bit of buffer as opposed to not tamping. But I'm pretty sure you can get some pretty good shots from it without tamping.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see. We need to move the camera obviously a little bit further so you can see. You can't really see, it just looks like dark. It's very pretty if you could see it. Just trust us. All right, so now. No, I can't do it. Yeah.
The pinky kiss down.
Yeah, well, there was Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Great movie. There's the Kung Fu universe where everyone's the pinky master. So I'm working on my pinky skills, hoping to be reborn in the pinky Kung Fu universe. All right, I'm going to knock this out now.
Okay. So we haven't changed anything on the grinder.
Nothing nowhere. Nope.
So hopefully we shall make it this time. I'm just going to check the wire at the back.
So I haven't actually done this little tapping before, and it's not a huge amount. Here we are. There are some grounds there. So I probably should remember at the end of a grind to do that tap. The EK also has that tricky thing there. I'm not going to bang on that and screw up the shot.
I think it was perhaps the wire that was...
Okay.
Yeah.
Something mechanical not right.
But it's good because I can confirm it with the graph, and I can say, okay, yeah. But the good thing about this is we're literally on 0.3 bars of pressure, and we've got around just under 18 grams coming up to 55 seconds. So we're looking okay. And
what kind of total time you're looking for?
Total time is usually I don't really look at the time. It's more of when the ramp up is. So usually if I'm halfway up the ramp cycle and stop, I'm good. Or if the ramp cycle has gone into the actual flow part, then I'm kind of looking to see whether, do I need to make a change or should I just stop it there? Generally, I will stop it at the 3-to-1 ratio. So if you're just worried about that, just stop it at 3-to-1. You don't have to think too much.
Okay.
And just bear in mind, you will be diluting it down. So even if it's slightly over, if you don't mind the slight harshness at the end, you can still drink it and you'll still be pretty happy.
Okay.
But I will say, if you're used to Rauh Allongés and you come to this profile, don't expect the full-on sort of fruitiness and the acidity that, juicy acidity that you were looking for. This is definitely more sort of the filter pour over style. And I really like it because when you share coffee with people with this type of coffee, a lot of people are very...
I want to smell it actually.
Yeah,
while
sure.
It's still hot.
A lot of people are quite surprised about what they're tasting.
So that's way less earthy and
Yeah.
way more top notes.
Yes.
So
I'm getting a lot of floral in there too,
I agree.
which is really nice. Okay, so let's water this down. Did you want to try this on its own, or
Nope.
do you want to? Okay.
let's try it cooler.
All right. So I left a little bit less than an ounce in that, but it should be okay. I would say the aromas on the Rauh Allongés are one of my favorite parts, and it's one of the things I miss on here. But as soon as I taste Filter 2.0 and I just taste the amount of sweetness in there and the amount of flavors with the style that we're kind of pulling out, it's to me it's pretty mind-boggling that we can get a brew so sweet and so little astringency and bitter. I just think it's great, and it's a really good profile to share with people when you've got a lot of people around and maybe they're not used to black coffee. It's a good gateway for them to try what specialty coffee is as black, rather than adulterating it with milk. So,
Well, the reaction video is here. This is the best filter coffee I've ever had. I'm not a fan of filter coffee. I tend to have that kind of, I guess, first thing in the morning, sure. But we're at 5 o'clock now on a Friday, and so I don't have that desperate need for caffeine. There is no astringency here, nor is there any acidity. It's very mellow, and I think it's super interesting that the same bean can be made in two styles, both quite successfully. The Allongé and this Filter 2.1 are both delicious brews, and I would be surprised if you told me they were the same bean. I would assume that they were not. So if there's any cafes out there that want to just show off, here's a Filter 2.1, here's an Allongé, the same bean, now be ready to have your mind blown to your customer.
Yeah.
That would be a cool thing to do, and those of you at home, I'd recommend doing both and getting them to work. Yeah, I'd say this is very sophisticated.
yeah.
And it's a quite relaxing brew. It is not hyper intellectualized like a lot of espresso can be, where you're sitting there dissecting all the different flavors. And like grapefruit pith, and even though I taste that there. But anyway, so that's lovely. If your partner, let's say, doesn't like filter coffee, try this. Give them this and see if they change their mind occasionally. I know Bugs tried this actually yesterday, and you went, wow, this is really good. And she doesn't drink filter coffee. She's just an espresso babe. So, latte babe at that. We got questions, or we're over time?
Latte Babe 101 says, just got my Weber's unit filter and wondering if their suggested filter below and steel puck screen on top sandwich is preferable.
Right, so the question is, the Weber portafilter that just came out, it's kind of a separate question, which is Weber recommends a filter on the bottom and then a metal mesh filter on top. I think that's a different question than making filter 2.1 with the Weber unifilter. I will mention that Paul was doing morning shift doing this before Scott Rayo took it the same station and was being judged quite a bit for that. And at the end, Scott said, Paul's okay. So you are hearing it from somebody who is rather close to the man who invented it and was said to make it okay. And secondly, you did have the Weber Unifilter there.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to try it with this style of coffee?
Not on the filter 2.1, but
Okay.
as a 3-to-1 and actually 4-to-1 ratio. So at really long ratios, and with lighter roasts. What I would say is manage your puck depth, because the holes on the unifilter are so wide. You have to negate that with a thicker puck depth.
Okay. So a greater dose?
Yes, so up dose, or as they are recommending, using a puck screen, which also reduces the headspace and preserves the puck.
So one thing we noticed when we're making espresso is that the P100 was making thicker pucks from the same dose. And my theory was that it was making more eccentric coffee particles.
Right.
Do you think that greater fluffiness is then coming to play and is part of why Filter 2.1 is tasting better with this?
Yeah, I would say so. One of the things I've noticed difference is the acidity. There wasn't really much acidity from the niche, but this one is really juicy and kind of makes you salivate before that grapefruit pith comes in. And I think that's due to the distribution of grind size particles that it creates is more narrow, so it's just more specialized.
Okay.
Which kind of logically assumes that we're just getting more of a proportion of those grind size that we require to get those really high TDS and such a long extraction at the same time.
Okay, so it might be thicker because there's less fines going between the holes. So the second part of the question was metal mesh on top. You know how I feel about metal meshes.
Yep.
I had actually Paul do an extensive research on it for quite a long time. Tell us what you think of metal mesh.
Now, I still have it at home, and actually the only profile I use it for is a Ravalanche.
Okay.
Why do I use it? Because I'm able to have a little bit coarser, so my flow in my basket is more free. But also it makes me push my extractions longer. So you know how you were saying I'm pulling it at 100, 110? That's because I'm pretty much using it with a screen, and I'm able to push those extractions longer. I find you are able to draw out a lot more sweetness simply due to the puck degrading less.
Okay, so it's really protecting the puck even better because it's essentially like a metal sponge.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
How have you dealt with the skank issue?
With the skank issue, so what I call funky flavors or dirty flavors, you can either clean it with kafitza and then rinse, but you still got stuff in there.
If you own a blowtorch.
Yeah, blowtorch, and put it over your stove top.
An oven. I mean, I'll and actually, I mean, a cookie tray, and like they're quite cheap. So buy 20, and once you've gone through all 20, just put your oven on max for 20 minutes and just carbonize that stuff. There's a James Hoffman video where he does, he tests out a kind of mesh pour-over vessel. And his big problem with it is exactly the same problem I have with a metal sponge, which is these porous materials capture coffee particles and oils, which then go rancid and they're quite hard to clean.
Yeah.
What he does is he holds it over a gas hob and burns it, which is apparently what the manufacturer actually recommends. He didn't make that up.
Whoa.
So when I was saying propane torch, I wasn't kidding. I don't happen to make much creme brulee, but if you have a creme brulee torch around, you can just, you know, in like 5 seconds, you will have cleaned that mesh, and that's probably pretty eco.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of using the nylon filters, even though they make really superior coffee. I'm very ambivalent about that. Great coffee, but we've got plastic in here. I can't throw this in the garden now. I've got to fish them out. I do wash them, and I use them for 1 day. So I think the funkiness that I get from my filters is only if I use them for more than a day. So I would say if you have a whole bunch of metal mesh filters, you can reuse it all you want that day, and just don't let the oils get rancid. You will have stale coffee in there.
Yeah.
But at least you won't have rancid oils.
Yeah. On the point of the coffee inside, you could use an ultrasonics cleaner
So we
Or-
have,
Yeah.
just for what it's worth, I think you did this test where you would like rinsa for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
kefisa or whatever, like you let them sit, and then we have a super high power ultrasonic bath that we use for cleaning stuff here. We put them in, and scum came out everywhere. So plain old cleaning products and those meshes doesn't really get anything out. You need essentially movement. And you can't actually get into it. So you have to buy an ultrasonic bath or burn the shit out.
Yeah,
So,
that's about right.
any other questions?
Will you guys be doing a session for dialing in for milk-based drinks?
Yeah, so what I mentioned at the beginning of this show is that we're changing a little bit. We noticed that the Aldama show that we just did is now sold out forever from from Square Mile, so not a very helpful video if you're trying to follow us. So we're changing the title of that to be, I think, a medium light bean.
Yep.
And what we're doing now is we're focusing either on types of beans and the kind of recipes we would use with it, or the kind of recipe, and then working the other way around. Like here we've got filter 2.1, what kind of bean is appropriate for it. And absolutely we will do the whole gamut of them,
yeah.
you know, piccolo lattes and flat whites and lattes and whatever you guys want to hear. But what we'll do is just focus on one thing at a time. So if we do, I don't know, we're actually joking, we were going to dial in the Starbucks bean and make a venti. So, I mean, why not? And we'll send someone out, you know, maybe wearing one of those mustache masks to Starbucks to buy beans. No one sees us. And we'll see, because the reality is that people do go buy that. I'm laughing, but people do go buy the beans that they see around them.
Yeah.
And maybe, God forbid, they liked Starbucks before they bought a decent espresso machine. And now we'd like to see if we can make it better. So yes, is the answer there. And when I first was starting in coffee and we were just developing this machine, I went out of the way Italian delis buying kilo bags of 3 to 5 year old coffee beans to see, can I make a good coffee with it? Because I knew that that's what our customers would be buying. They'd be going to an Italian deli and buying Lavazza Gold and not being told that those beans are 3 years old. So can we make good beans from these things? And in fact, the next episode is going to be some nice beans that Paul bought too much of that have now gone stale. So what can we do with stale beans?
Yeah.
If we have any more questions?
I think we-
Okay, so thank you for joining us. As I said, the next episode is going to be quite nice beans you bought too many of that have gone stale. We're going to try and figure out how to suppress the bad flavors, make the good flavors shine. Join us for that. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, John. Always a pleasure.